Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 61 of the World of Sports podcast. I'm your host, Diego Sandoval, and joined with me, as always, is my co-host, Logan Ring. Logan, say what's up to the people.
What's up, everybody?
We've got a great episode in store. We're going to be talking about all three sports, NFL, MLB, NBA. However, this is going to be a very MLB-heavy episode, I would say. There's a lot to talk about. A lot has happened in the past, really 2 weeks, because we didn't do an episode last week, so we've got a lot to cover. Before we get into it, as always, follow us on all our social medias. Really appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, they're linked down below. And if you're listening, go over to our Instagram at TWOS podcast, and you should find the links to everything in our bio. So we're going to do our week 13 picks, break down everything that happened in the past week and a half of MLB, because a lot happened. And then we're going to give our NBA most surprising teams this year, good or bad. This has been an interesting start to the NBA season. It is Friday, December 3rd. We're coming up on the end of 2021. We got our 2021 wrapped, Spotify wrapped. Thanks for all the support, and be on the lookout for, I think we want to do more guests in 2022.
Oh, yeah.
Have more people on. So if you're listening and you're interested in coming on the show, hit us up, because
Dominic Roderick.
Honestly, yeah, we're willing to have anybody on at this point. just want to have a good time. But yeah, let's jump right into it with our NFL Week 13 picks. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this just because we have a lot to talk about later in the show. We're just going to run through it. I wasn't able to calculate how we did last week. I think you might be one game ahead of me now.
I think so.
I meant to do that and I just forgot. But we're very neck and neck. Last week, before last week, we were tied at 107-57-1.
Oh, right. And I think we had 5 differences, and I got 3 right. So that would make sense.
Okay. So you're one game up on me right now. The records will be posted on our Instagram when we post that graphic, which we do every week. But yeah, kicking off the week, we both got off on the right start. The Cowboys beat the Saints in Thursday Night Football last night. Really ugly game, but the Cowboys got it done. Moving on to the Sunday games, I have the Indianapolis Colts taking down the Houston Texans. I don't see this being much of a game.
Yep.
All right. Vikings Lions. Who you got in that one?
I got the Vikings in this one. I'm just picking against the Lions at this point. I mean, it's not hard.
Yep. The Lions are staring down the barrel of a 0-win season. Moving on, we have the New York Giants traveling down to Miami to take on the Dolphins. I have the Dolphins in this one. Giants are without Daniel Jones, their starting quarterback, and the Dolphins have looked better as of late.
Yeah, their defense has been pretty good too. So I got the Dolphins too, especially if, the Giants don't even have their quarterback.
Yeah. Moving on to another one that I think is a pretty clear choice. I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going into Atlanta and taking down the Falcons.
Yep, same.
Moving on. You took the Jets last week. Did you take them again this week up against Philadelphia?
No, I did not. I did not take the Jets again.
I did not either. So we're both rocking with the Eagles. Moving on, the battle in Chicago is the Arizona Cardinals taking on the Bears. I have the Cardinals in this one. It looks like they're going to get Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins back, which is obviously a huge boost. Those are 2 top 5 guys at their positions when fully healthy and when playing well. So I don't think the Cardinals have much trouble.
Yeah, same. It'll be a big deal if they get them back, though, because, obviously you want to get them rolling again before playoffs.
Exactly. And the Cardinals are in a great spot. They managed to kind of stay somewhat afloat without Kyler and DeAndre Hopkins. They were on a bye last week, but they did all right without them, which is huge. And it kind of shows how good that team is and poised to make a run. Moving on to a game that I think is going to be a very good one, and that is the Los Angeles Chargers heading out to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. Who do you have in this one?
I got the Bengals in this one, but I have a bold prediction later. I think this is going to be a really close game. 2 pretty evenly matched teams, like you said, so I'm excited for it.
I have the Bengals as well. They demolished the Steelers last week. And the Chargers haven't looked like the team they were kind of talked up to be at the beginning of the season. They played well towards the beginning of the season, but it's kind of been on a bit of a slope since then. They lost pretty handedly to the Broncos last week. And I don't know what's really going on, but the Chargers don't seem to be the team we thought they were going to be down the stretch. But yeah, I think this is going to be a really good game. I've got the Bengals as well. Moving on to a game that I don't think is going to be as close, despite the fact that the Rams aren't playing as well as they were towards the beginning of the season. I think that they can take the Jaguars in this one.
Yeah, I agree.
Moving on, the Washington football team coming off of, I think they're on 3 straight wins. They're on a little hot streak there. Are going to head into Las Vegas to take on the Raiders, who are coming off of a big Thursday night Thanksgiving win against the Cowboys. Who do you have in this one?
I got the Raiders in this one. It seems like we might have all the same picks, to be honest. But yeah, I just think them playing against tougher competition, even like a week before, and showing that they can beat them. I think that they can beat the Washington football team, even though I don't think it's going to be like a blowout or anything. This could be pretty close, but yeah, I still got the Raiders.
I think this game is going to be very determinant for both teams in terms of whether or not they're actually, on an upward tick into a playoff push, because the football team is on a hot streak and the Raiders are sitting at 6-5. That AFC is pretty open in terms of teams around that record that could jump into a wild card spot. I also have the Raiders in this one. Moving on to an AFC North matchup, the Baltimore Ravens are heading into Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. I have the Ravens in this one. I just think that they're the better team, and the Steelers just have not looked good.
Yeah, the Steelers have a lot more wins than I think they should, and I just don't think they're a very good team, and the Ravens are, so I'm rocking with the Ravens too.
Moving on now to an NFC West matchup. We have the 49ers taking on the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. Who do you have in this one?
I got the 49ers. The Seahawks have just been really bad, in my opinion, for a lot of the matchups. Yeah, it's just been a disappointing year so far, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's definitely rings true. I've got the Niners as well. That Seahawks team, everyone kind of expected them to turn it back on once Russ came back, and they just haven't. Mm-hmm. That offensive line is one of the worst in football, and that defense is not good. And that's not a good kind of way to succeed in the NFL. So I've got the Niners in that one. Sunday night matchup is an AFC West, a lot of divisional matchups this week, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Denver Broncos. Broncos coming off a big win against the Chargers. That AFC West is very close. All teams are very close. I think the Chiefs are 7-4, and every other team is 6-5, if I'm correct. I just think the Chiefs are the better team, and they're kind of back playing like the Chiefs we thought they would be. So I've got the Chiefs.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of feel like there's some of what we thought the Chiefs would be coming back for sure. Patrick Mahomes has had some of his best weeks like in the recent ones. So maybe they're going to get on a roll again, but I got them in this one.
And we've got a treat for Monday Night Football, a massive game in terms of the AFC West playoff picture, the AFC East divisional picture, and just it's going to be a great game. The New England Patriots are heading to Buffalo to take on the Bills. Mac Jones, Bill Belichick against Josh Allen and just his array of weapons and offensive talent. I think this is going to be a very good game. Mm-hmm. I don't think home field advantage plays much. Obviously, Bills fans are a lot to deal with, but it's very similar to playing in New England, playing in Buffalo. They're very similar. And I think they stay on a roll. They've looked so dominant this year. I've got the Patriots beating the Bills and taking that, basically taking that stronghold in the AFC East.
Yeah. Okay. We have our first difference there.
Our first and only.
Yeah. It was really scary picking against the Patriots because they've won 7 of their last 8 after a pretty rocky start. And they've honestly looked like maybe the best team over those last 8 weeks, which is just really weird to say, at least one of the best. And the Bills have been great too. They've had a couple bad weeks, but other than that, they've just shown that they still are the team that we thought that they would be. So I'm really excited for this one. But I still got the Bills.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great one. I just think it's perfect that it's set up for Monday Night Football. Have the whole world watching. It's gonna be a good one. All right. Before we move on to the MLB, do we want to do MLB last or smack it in the middle of NBA and NFL?
We can do MLB last.
Okay. We'll move on to NBA right after our bold predictions. My first bold prediction, I'm bringing back a classic bold prediction. I have the Los Angeles Rams winning by 25 points against the Jaguars. I've hit on, I think, 2 out of 3 of my predictions like this. So
solid.
That's mine.
Yeah, I got one that I've done before, different teams, obviously, but I got the Chargers Bengals ending in a game-winning drive. I saw some stat where I think it was like the last 3 or 4 games they played have all been decided by 1 possession. So yeah, I think this will be an exciting game. I'm really excited to watch this one.
Yeah, I like it. I have a big game from a big-time quarterback of my second bold prediction. I have Tom Brady against the Atlanta Falcons. Throw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. That is a huge game, but I think the Falcons defense is one of the worst, if not the worst in the league. And Tom Brady always has a little something when he plays the Falcons just because they had that Super Bowl matchup where he came back 28-3, all the memes. He's always motivated to do well against the Falcons, and they're just so much better.
I got one for a physically large quarterback, which is Big Ben with 45 plus pass attempts against the Ravens. And the Ravens have a really good run defense. So I think, he always throws so much. It's not a great offense that they have.
It's a terrible one.
Yeah, he just throws every single play. They don't run a lot. So against a team where their defense doesn't allow a lot of running, why would you not just throw it a bunch? I still don't think it's going to be a fun game to watch Big Ben with, though.
Yeah. How many pass attempts did you say?
45.
45. That's a little throwback to your NFL Week 6 pick.
Yeah. I think you got like 44.
You got to redeem yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Steelers don't have a good offense in place where you have a bottom 5 quarterback throwing the ball that many times. But anyways, that's what the Steelers are at this year. So that's what we got for the NFL. Again, be on the lookout on our Instagram for that post with all of our picks. Let's move on to the NBA. Now, this season has been an interesting one to kick off. We have some teams that are surprising in both ways, in positive ways and in negative ways. But I think the story of this season, we're not going to delve too much into it. We're going to talk more about the teams that are surprising, is the injuries. It's unfortunate to see, but it's happened to most teams in the NBA this year. Injuries hurting what would be, top seeded teams.
Right.
What comes to mind, the Bucks have struggled with injuries this year. The Heat right now are really struggling with injuries. Sixers,
Ben Simmons, whatever. Yeah,
Clippers, Nuggets, Lakers. Kind of LeBron's just kind of been in and out of the lineup all year. Obviously, the Warriors are missing Clay. Now the Suns are missing Booker. Like this is I feel like as of right now, the story of the season is teams either succeeding or failing because of injuries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're going to talk about it later, but other teams like the Warriors and Suns, who also, the Suns have been just barely injured, but the Warriors still don't have Klay Thompson, and we're going to talk about how good they've been. So,
yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about the Warriors. 18-3.
Yeah,
dominating.
I think I came into this year extremely confident that the Warriors would probably be like a 4 to 10 seed. At least before Klay Thompson. And after that, I still didn't see them being like a top 3 team. They're one of the top 2 teams. It depends on whatever you want to put them. But they have just been so good. That Warriors offense has been back rolling the way it has been, not for the last 2 years, but the 4-5 year run that they had was just insane. And the ball movement is amazing. Steph Curry is the greatest shooter of all time. Obviously, we know that. Draymond and his chemistry are great. All their role players are just fantastic. And that offense is just, I don't know what the system is that they do it, that no other team can replicate it in the same way, but it's just awesome to watch. Like, I'm glad that I'm actually appreciating them now, because no other team has ever done this.
Yeah. Steph Curry has been the best player in the world this season. And I think a lot of people will agree with that. It's just the way that team works together. And I don't see them slowing down, because I think a guy like Klay Thompson, it's very difficult to add him to a team and they're going to do worse, because just the way he plays, I feel like he can only bring positives to a team. I mean, especially the Warriors team. He's going to fit perfectly. Obviously, that's just like the way they play the game is for Klay Thompson and Steph Curry to succeed. But with the amount of success the role players are having right now, this team looks like a favorite.
Right. And I just talked about their offense. They also have the best defense in the league by far. The difference from them in defensive rating from the number 1 to number 2 team is the same difference from the number 2 team to the number 14 team. That's how insane it has been. They're just dominating on everything. I mean, you shouldn't be able to have that good of an offense and your defense is just amazing too. Like they play fast paced too, and they just still don't allow points. I think they're still the best team, even though they might not have the best record.
Yeah, and let's go over to the team with the best record. After starting 1-3, the Phoenix Suns have rattled off 18 straight wins. They haven't lost in a long time. And it's just, I feel like it's a very similar situation to the Warriors. Like, yeah, they have a couple stars, but just the team has worked so well together on both ends of the floor that they're just finding ways to win games night in and night out.
Yeah, that team plays so well together, and they're the second best defense in the league. The top 2 defenses have the top 2 records. I mean, look at that. But yeah, like
who would have thought?
Yeah, that's crazy. They have, yes, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, maybe McCall Bridges you can throw in there as like their top guys. But yeah, every other player that they have, they can match up well against anybody. Their bench is great. And I mean, every single player just knows their role really well. Their offense runs so smoothly. A lot of that is due to Chris Paul. I mean, he's the point guard. He's leading the league in assists. But it's just been crazy because they've dealt with a little bit of injuries too. Devin Booker was out last game against the Warriors, and they still are out for the second half, and they still were able to win that game. And yeah, you're playing the best or second best team in the league behind you. So they're also playing tonight, which I'm really excited for, because that's kind of, in my opinion, going to solidify who is the number 1 in power rankings. But yeah, that's going to be exciting.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the guys they went out and got this offseason, and it wasn't many. I think they really tried to bring back the team from last year, but the two that I think of is JaVale McGee and Landry Shamet. Like, Landry Shamet hasn't done much so far, but it's just having that extra guy on the floor really helps. And JaVale McGee is averaging double-digit points for them and 7 rebounds, like 10 and 7 out of a guy that they just kind of picked up saying, oh, you're going to back up DeAndre Ayton and play some minutes here and there. They have depth on this team, like real depth. Cam Johnson is a spark plug, a guy that we talked about last year, I think, a little bit, as a guy that's going to kind of continue to develop with this Suns team. Frank Kaminsky has been solid, as much of kind of a meme he is. Cam Payne is great. Like, this team is a very deep team that I think is poised to take another run in the West.
Right. I think they have that chip on their shoulder too from losing in the finals, where it's like, yes, you can blame that or you can just make the excuse that we win against teams that were injured, which is obviously true, but they are still a very good team. So yeah, I'm happy that after a slow start, they've been the best that they can be. They've won 18 in a row. That's a franchise record. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, moving on to the next team I want to talk about, or I guess we both wanted to talk about, was the Washington Wizards. And what is their record right now? Let me just check.
14-8.
14-8. Who expected that?
Not me.
No one. And like, if you gave me that stat, their record, I would be like, oh, Bradley Beal is probably having an amazing season.
He's really
still
not
been good, but not like an all NBA type player. It's just every single person on that team has been playing well, and they have a pretty average defense, which is a step up from what they have been. but their offense has just been really good, and they've been able to win in tight games. I think it's just kind of the other guys or whatever that you call them. They brought in Montrezl Harrell, or from the trade with the Lakers. They got Montrezl Harrell, they got Spencer Dinwiddie, Kyle Kuzma, KCP. Those are kind of the big additions that they had, and they've all been really good. Even if the statistics say that they're shooting the same or whatever, they've been so good for this team. Montrez, like specifically in my opinion, has been so amazing. He's a 6-man of the year candidate. He's averaging 16 and a half points and 8 rebounds. And we know that the energy that he brings is just insane. But yeah, this is just a really well-rounded team. I've seen them play a couple of games where they just come back from deficits and they just able to like close it out in the final minutes. And it's just been really impressive because they've just been bad for a few years. And ever since the John Wall sort of era, it just hasn't really been looking up. They had Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal and still barely made the playoffs. So yeah, it's a good thing for Wizards fans because this has been a fun season so far.
Yeah, they were a team that kind of, came in and everyone was thinking, okay, they just traded away Westbrook. Those like couple years where people thought maybe they could make the playoffs in the East are over. But those guys that they got for Westbrook have made the difference 100%. Kyle Kuzma is leading the team with 9 rebounds a game. Like he's also a good defender. KCP, a really good defender. They brought in guys that they thought could make an impact on both sides of the floor, and they have. And when you have a team where there are 5 guys, almost 6, averaging double-digit points, you're going to find success. Like, I think this season, Bradley Beal really had to kind of take a step back and realize I'm probably not going to win much with the Wizards if I'm averaging 30 to 33 points a game. Like, it's not going to happen because you have a team like the Wizards and there's one superstar. That superstar is going to have the ball the whole time. And that's never a good recipe. But I think he's kind of taken a step back and realized, okay, we might be able to have success if I get everybody involved. And Bradley Beal is averaging 6 assists this year. Like that, he's averaging 23 and 6, which isn't what we think of Bradley Beal. We think of 32 and 4 maybe. But I think bringing in those guys from the Lakers, it's really the Lakers, KCP, Kuzma, and Montrezl Harrell, like they've made the difference for the Wizards this year.
Right. And a very underappreciated guy that I want to talk about just quickly is Deni Avdija. He was a draft pick last year. I think he was like top 5 projected, and then he fell to the Wizards at like 8 or something. He's been like statistically a top 3 defender in the league so far, which I did not even know he played defense well, to be honest with you. He came into the league as like a sort of taller point guard sort of position, and he's been so good on defense. So just adding to that. And yeah, like you said, the Lakers guys that they brought in, I mean, the Lakers had they had the top defense one year when they won the championship, and then still like a top 5 defense. A lot of it is those guys. So yeah, I guess we're seeing that effect of them where it's not just the Lakers, it's the people themselves, where when they go to the Wizards, they're bringing some of that culture. And it's been huge. So yeah, good for them. The next team I want to talk about, it's going to make me really happy. Diego, let me talk about them because I think they deserve it finally. The Cleveland Cavaliers are 12-10 this season. I mean, who would have thought? Not me at all. But they've genuinely been a good team so far. And it's so exciting because they haven't without LeBron. Without LeBron in 20 years, they haven't been good. So that's not even it's literally a fact. They haven't. But yeah, it's been awesome to watch them, and their whole starting lineup. Colin Sexton's injured now, but their starting lineup is Darius Garland, who is 6'1", Isaac Okoro, who is 6'3". I mean, that's pretty normal for your 1 and 2. But then their small forward through center are all 7 feet tall. Larry Markkinen, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen. And that's not supposed to work, but it has. And it has really worked defensively. They got the 3rd best defense in the league. And it's not just a fluke because they've been doing it every game. They've been holding opponents under 100 for most games so far, especially recently. And I just want to talk about the effect of Evan Mobley because when he's been out for 4 games. They lost all those games. And yeah, we had a ton of injuries during that stretch, but you can tell that they're missing that impact. And defensively, Evan Mobley has been so good. I think he's the rookie of the year so far. It's between him and Scotty Barnes, but he's averaging like 15 points a game, 8 rebounds. and throw in a steal and 2 blocks. He's been so impactful. Jarrett Allen too. I think if you want to talk about the best player on the Cavs so far, it's got to be him. His chemistry with Darius Garland has been so good. You see them in the pick and roll. I think he gets like 3 lobs from him every game. It might be the most in the league, honestly. And he's still 23 years old. People look at him and think he's like 27 at this point. He's been in the league for 4 years. It's crazy. But yeah, this team has been looking so good together. I can't even mention all the guys, but it's been really fun to watch them be actually good again.
Yeah, when I look at the Cavs, I think kind of the same way I do about the Wizards, and the fact that they're playing very well as a team. And you look at the team, I guess not including Sexton because he's out for the year, 7 guys are averaging double-digit points. Like when you have more than your starting lineup averaging double digits, that's a very good sign for your team. And like you said, the defense has been outstanding, and it's a very weird kind of team that they've manufactured. We talked about it in the offseason, kind of like, what are the Cavs doing? And I guess they had this plan. I agree with you that Evan Mobley's been the best rookie so far this year. And maybe this is something that teams look at and say, maybe 3 7-footers in a lineup will really help our defense, which as long as one of them or 2 of them are decent in terms of perimeter defense, that's a big help to have 3 guys of that size on the court at the same time.
Right. Yeah. Larry Markkinen, he's been joked about a lot for his defense, but he's honestly held up his own. He's having to guard 3s who are like 6'5" sometimes. And I mean, he's not a great defender, but he's definitely been okay. And then Evan Mobley has been one of the best defenders in the league. So yeah, he's been in the pick and roll with Trae Young, and he's been able to hold his own. I mean, it's been really impressive. And then in the paint, Jarrett Allen is an amazing defender too. And throw in Isaac Okoro, who can switch onto 3s and 4s sometimes too, if he needs to. Yeah, I'm just really happy that they've been good and gone on some good stretches. Without injuries, I don't know where this team would be at, to be honest. It's a big what if, but it's been fun.
Yeah, and speaking of injuries, when we're gonna talk about, there's really one team that we think of when we think of kind of disappointing, but a lot of that has to do with injuries and us not kind of considering other teams as disappointing because of injuries. So, you think of the Clippers at 11-11, 11-11, the Nuggets at 10-11, the 76ers at 11-11. Like, those teams have had to deal with injuries. The Sixers have had to deal with Ben Simmons, things like that. It's just like you can't really put them into the category of disappointing just because of the circumstances that have been thrown at them. You might say, oh, what about the Lakers? If you have listened to this podcast, I did. I'm pretty sure, Logan, you did as well. Like, we expected the Lakers to get off to a start kind of like this. So I think it might be a disappointment for people who maybe don't know as much about the chemistry of basketball and stuff like that, just saying, oh, the Lakers, that many people, 12-11. But I feel like that's not a disappointment. It's more expected.
Plus LeBron's been out.
Right. And injuries as well. But the team that really hasn't dealt with much of that and still hasn't managed to do much are the New York Knicks at 11-11. They were a team that kind of burst onto the scene with Tom Thibodeau last year, made the playoffs, lost to the Hawks, but obviously we saw the Hawks ended up making a pretty decent little push. And everyone kind of expected, oh, they're a super young team with a lot of kind of role players here and there that could play well. They're going to develop and get better next year, and they really haven't. Their big acquisition of Kemba Walker in the offseason, Tom Thibodeau announced he's just straight up not in the rotation anymore. Like, they're not playing Kemba Walker. And this team just doesn't look like a kind of well put together, well oiled machine quite yet. But Tom Thibodeau teams usually look like that, but this one just doesn't.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, it hasn't changed a ton from last year. I mean, they brought in Kemba Walker, like you said, but other than that, it's pretty much the same. And if you look at some of the worst lineups in the league, it's like the starting lineup of the Knicks is one of them. Your starting lineup should not be one of the worst lineups. And defensively, they were a top 5 defense last year. Now they're 19th. And that's kind of what they hung their hat on last year because, yes, their offense was okay, but their defense was so good that it would keep you in pretty much every game. It has not been that way this season at all. They're allowing a lot of threes. They're allowing even interior points. Like the Bulls played them yesterday and they just kind of dominated on everything. DeMar DeRozan could just get what he wants. He even had a slow start and then just went off and there was nothing they could do to stop him. And yeah, the Kemba Walker situation is weird because yes, he hasn't been great, but he offered something that other guys on the team don't have, which is like 3-point shooting and a little bit of playmaking. Defensively, I understand he's 6'1". I mean, he's not gonna do a lot on the defensive end, yes. But what you bring in Alec Burks for those minutes now. Derrick Rose has been great. He's been probably their best player, honestly. I mean, statistically at least. Julius Randle has put up the numbers, but Derrick Rose, if you look at like the plus minus and advanced stats, whatever, when he's on the court, they're winning. But yeah, it's just weird because Kemba Walker, I don't know if it's too early or not because something did need to change, but it just seems like this change isn't really going to do a lot in my opinion. But yeah, Tibbs is a good coach, so we'll see what happens. The Knicks had a great start and then they've just been awful since. So yeah, I mean, he's going to make more changes, I'm sure, if it keeps not working, but it definitely has been a disappointment.
Yeah. And again, it's 20, 25 games into the season, depending on where you're at. Long way to go, but it's also about a quarter of the way done. So, you're going to have to start figuring out if the team has not quite yet. So we'll see what the Knicks do, what all those teams do that are struggling with injuries but are usually contenders. I think that'll be an interesting storyline to keep up this year. Mm-hmm. Let's move away from the NBA and talk about the wild week that was that happened in MLB this past week. A lot of stuff happened. Namely, I honestly don't know what's more important. I guess the whole league shutting down is probably the most important thing. But a lot of stuff happened in free agency this past week. And a lot of that is because everyone kind of suspected the league would shut down. So we'll start off with our free agency news, our reactions to it, what we think of all the moves that were made. And the big spenders were two teams, and that's the Texas Rangers and the New York Mets. The Texas Rangers went out and spent in one day, it was in the span of 24 hours, spent $500 million on their middle infield for the next 7 to 10 years.
Nice.
That's a lot of money. Marcus Semien signed a 7-year, $175 million contract after his phenomenal season. And then Corey Seager went out and signed a 10-year, $325 million deal, which is sad. As a Dodger fan, he was kind of our guy. We drafted him, brought him up, was our stud for the past 5-6 years. Obviously, he struggled with injury throughout his time with the Dodgers, but he was still, when he was on the field, he was one of our best, if not our best player. And just looking at these deals, I think I understand the Seager deal. Because they're a rebuilding team and he's a great guy to rebuild around. When he's healthy, like I said, he's one of the best players in the league, one of the best offensive players in the league. I'll tell you that. He's not as strong as most shortstops in the field, but offensively, he'll compete with all of them. Marcus Semien made a little bit less sense, in my opinion. I knew any team that went out and signed him, it was a little bit of a risk because no doubt he earned the money last year. However, he never really produced like he did last year any other year in his career. I mean, he had the most home runs by a second baseman ever. Like, this is a guy, I think he's 32 now. So you're signing him until he's 39. And 175 million isn't like a lot of money, but it's still a good amount of money. Like, for a guy that's going to be 32 to 39 when you have him, that one makes a little less sense than the Seager one.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm a Rangers fan, I'm really excited to see the names. But if you look deep into it, like, you signed two guys. Well, you should be excited, first of all.
Right, 100%.
Sucked. You need to be excited. But yes, Semien had the amazing season. Other than that, like you said, he's been kind of good.
Fine.
Not great.
Yeah.
you pay him 170 million. Corey Seager, I would be very scared to give him that much money considering the injury proneness that he has.
You go. I have more to talk about Corey Seager, but
Right.
just like, what are your reactions to these deals, I guess?
Yeah, it's just like I would be a little nervous because he has been injury prone, and 10 years is a long time. There has been a lot of big contracts that have kind of just especially at the tail end where you're just like, man, I just want this to end. And I mean, he's obviously an amazing player. It's just the injuries is the only thing that scares me with that. But yeah, if you're the Rangers, you need to make deals like this to make your team move forward. So I'd be definitely happy for them. And I saw a lot of news about the Rangers making big deals, and I was just kind of like, why? Like, why would they do that? Why would people sign with them? And it happened. So people knew what was up. But yeah, I mean, good for the Rangers because I think they're going to be a lot better next year. They better be at least.
Yeah. So Corey Seager, as a Dodger fan, I loved him. I have his jersey right over there. Again, he's injury prone, 100%. And I think Scott Boras and Corey Seager did an amazing job with this contract because it's all there. It's all guaranteed. He has no opt outs. It's 10 years, $325 million. He's going to get that money. Like, Corey Seager is going to a state where they have no taxes, and he's getting paid $325 million. I saw a thing. If the Dodgers wanted to retain Corey Seager and pay him just a little bit more than the Rangers did, they would have had to give him a $410 million deal because of California's taxes. So that deal just makes sense because for Corey Seager. But this reminds me a lot, and I know I wasn't even alive when this happened, but just being a baseball fan, I've done research. It is eerily similar to the Alex Rodriguez situation. Alex Rodriguez started his career with the Mariners, played, I think, 4 or 5 years with them, 4 or 5 years with them, got traded to the Rangers. And immediately the Rangers signed him to a 10-year, $252 million deal, thinking he's our guy for his career. We're going to compete. They didn't compete for 3 years, and they traded him to the Yankees. Like, this feels like it could happen as well, but again, it's tough to kind of compare these two time periods. But I still think the Rangers are multiple years away from competing, despite the moves that they've made.
Yeah, that's what scares me, is because you're going from a team who has been terrible to trying to be a contender, basically, is what you want. At least in the next 7 years, you're trying to be a contender. And that's a long time, but yeah, I mean, you got a long way to go and you need a lot more signings for that. So if these two guys don't pan out, you're kind of just there goes your future, to be honest. Like,
yeah,
it's you just spent like $500 million, like you said. So it's a high risk, high reward. But yeah, it's still exciting for them because it's something different.
Yeah, Ranger fans deserve to be excited, and they don't even have a top 10 farm system as of right now. So we'll see what the Rangers do. But I do think that going out and getting Seager is a step in the right direction if they have something else planned. Because if not, and they're just going to try to ride Seager and a average set of prospects, I don't know how well that's going to go. They also went out and signed John Gray, 4-year, $56 million deal. That's not a bad signing. He's kind of a guy whose stats have been inflated because he's pitched in Coors Field, but he's got good stuff. So I think that's a good signing. To the other team that was the big spenders, that was the New York Mets. They signed Max Scherzer to a 3-year, $130 million deal. As a Dodger fan, I wanted us to bring back Seager and Scherzer, but for the price tags that they got put on them, I'm okay that we stayed away from them, to be completely honest.
Yeah, the two of them, we knew one was going to go, and it was probably Seager because, yes, the Dodgers are not going to offer the contract he got. But yeah, that's a lot of money for Scherzer, and he's obviously amazing. I mean, the Mets are big spenders, so it's not that surprising. But yeah, the Dodgers, I mean, it kind of makes sense that they stayed away from it because this is just a really, really hefty price tag. And Scherzer went with that money. I mean, he got a ton of money for it. So if that's what he wanted, then he got it. But yeah, the Mets do this every year, and every year we
That's
say
true.
this is amazing. They got these amazing free agents. Wow, they're gonna be great. Um, and I'm probably gonna make the mistake again and say they're gonna be great, but they need to prove it. And Scherzer's a guy who's constantly been really, really good. Let's hope he doesn't get injured because I don't know what happens to the Mets. But hey, I mean, it's a lot of money, so you got to produce. But yeah, Scherzer's done that.
I mean, it's really hard to see without injuries our starting rotation with Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom in it not do well and not do well in a playoff series, but they have to get there. And the Mets have proven that they can talk all they want, but they might not get there every year. But I mean, $43 million a year for Max Scherzer, just like give it up to Scott Boras for making that happen. That is so much money for a guy that's at the end of his career. It's ridiculous.
Right.
And Max Scherzer also did a great job earning that contract this past season. So that's just insane. And obviously that's the biggest deal the Mets are going to make this year, this offseason. But I don't want to overshadow them signing Starling Marte, Eduardo Escobar, and Mark Canha to multiple year deals for all of them. All those guys bring a lot to the table. And I think if anything's going to make them take that second leap, obviously Scherzer will help. But those three guys in their lineup and in that kind of batting order is going to help maybe even more.
Right. And this is, we'll talk about it later with the whole lockout and whatever. That's a whole different discussion. If you spend money, you're going to be good eventually. Okay.
Yeah.
There's no way you're not going to be good eventually if you spend 5-10 times more than other teams are doing. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's a lot more than other teams do. And they got those guys who are all very good. And yeah, I agree. That might be even bigger because those are all really good players. Those are fringe or all-stars, pretty good players at least.
Starling Marte played like one of the best outfielders in the league last year. So he's going to come in and be their guy.
Yeah, I mean, the Mets have been sort of, it's like sort of top heavy in a way because they have these amazing signings, but really it's just guys have been a little disappointing. If all these guys are disappointing, it's a curse or something. I don't know what's wrong with the Mets. But those are all really big signings, and so if they aren't good next year, I don't know what to say, to be honest.
Yeah, and only time will tell for the New York Mets. They spent the money that like the front office did everything they needed to do, to be completely honest. They had a phenomenal offseason. If that's all they end up doing, I think that's a complete success for the Mets. But it's going to come down to whether they can figure it out on the field. Moving on, I kind of put this in order of like deals that I think are of the most importance. So obviously those two teams making their deals were the most important. Moving on to a team that made a couple of moves that we expected to make moves that I'm really excited to watch next year. Seattle Mariners. They went out and signed AL Cy Young Award winner Robbie Ray to a 5-year, $115 million deal. I love that for the Mariners. I think they're a team that I'm okay with taking that gamble because I think Robbie Ray, for that much money, is a gamble. Even though he won the Cy Young, he wasn't a Cy Young caliber pitcher before last year. He was an all right pitcher. He strikes a lot of guys out, yeah, but he was never really at that level that he was last year. Obviously, that's the main deal. They also traded for Adam Frazier from the Padres, who before he was traded to the Padres was one of the best, if not the best, just base hit hitters in baseball, which can't hurt your team at all. So I think those two moves were great for the Mariners.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the Robbie Ray situation is a little bit like Marcus Semien, which is weird that it came from the same team. But yeah, I think the Mariners definitely need to take this gamble because they needed to get someone. And I thought Marcus Semien was going to go there, to be honest. I think we both did. But still, I mean, Robbie Ray, he was amazing last season. So if he can even be like a part of that for next year, then, or for the next 5 years, hopefully, then yeah, that's going to be a really big boost to this team who's up and coming, who has a very good young prospect core and also some players who have really produced the last season. The culture over there just seems like they're guys who really, really, really want to make the playoffs and are going to do everything that they can to do it. And bringing in like a guy like Robbie Ray is going to really like make all the players feel good about, oh, we just got the Cy Young.
Right.
Even if he doesn't play like he did before, it's still going to be a boost no matter what. And a guy like Adam Frazier, I think he's going to produce at a good level at least. I mean, I think maybe his stats were a little bit overrated just because it was average with a lot of singles and doubles, but he's still a very good player. So yeah, two solid guys coming into that team. I think the Seattle Mariners should be happy. They didn't get a bunch of guys, but the two guys that they got should be really good for them.
Yeah, and before you go, oh, why did you say the risk is fine for the Mariners but not the Rangers? The Mariners have the number 2 farm system in baseball. They're going to call up a couple guys before this next season. They won 90 games last year. The Rangers won 60.
Right.
Like, these are two very different teams, even though they've kind of been looked at pretty similarly the past maybe 5 to 10 years. Maybe not up to 10. The Rangers were making the World Series back then, but like 5-ish years. The Mariners are in a phenomenal position right now as an organization.
Yeah, I agree.
Moving on to, we kind of mentioned this team, but the Toronto Blue Jays lost their Cy Young and lost their second most productive hitter last year. What did they do? I thought they made a good move in going out and getting Kevin Gausman, 5 years, $110 million deal. This is he's very similar to Robbie Ray, in my opinion. Like, guys that are already not up there in age, but towards the middle-ish of their career that pitched really well last year. And, you look at the Blue Jays, 91 wins, missed the playoffs. Like, that's really tough for them. But Kevin Gausman, I think, is a fine enough replacement for Robbie Ray that I think that they probably hover around that same win total next year.
Yeah, and I think it's about development with this team at this point. Yeah. They have so many young guys that you're going to get better if you do nothing, basically. And if you lose a big guy like you did for Robbie Ray and Marcus Semien, if you bring in a guy like Gausman, then at least you sort of patch that up. And yeah, Semien's production is definitely going to take a hit because he put up 45 home runs last season. But I mean, the offense on this team is so amazing anyway.
Yeah, the offense was never the problem with the
right, and the pitching is going to be probably the same now. I mean, Gausman's still amazing. I think Robbie Ray, I don't want to say this, but I think his last season is going to be a little bit of an outlier, to be honest. Just looking at the course of his career so far, I think he's still going to be really good. But I don't really expect him to put up another Cy Young season. So maybe maybe he does, but I would kind of expect him and Gausman to put up similar numbers. So yeah, I think it's about development. And I don't think this should be like looked at as bad. Like, oh, we lost 2 guys and only brought in 1. Because your team is still going to be really good and going to get better. Like, your window is not closing at all. It's just getting started. So yeah, the future is bright still.
And then I think moves early in the offseason generally go overlooked when you think about what teams do. The Blue Jays signed Jose Barrios to a 7-year extension. Like, he's going to be their guy as well. Like, and then Nate Pearson is one of their top, I think maybe their top prospect. He's going to pitch for them next year. They've got a solid rotation. It's going to be the bullpen for the Blue Jays because that offense I don't think is going anywhere. So
right,
I like the signing for the Blue Jays and for Kevin Gausman. Another signing that surprised me, the Detroit Tigers went out and got Javi Baez, 6-year, $140 million deal.
A lot of money.
It surprised me because I thought they were going to go after, if they, I think it was said that they were going to be spenders, and everyone kind of just looked towards Carlos Correa because the Tigers are a team that they're very similar to the Rangers. They're in full rebuild, but they have the money to find a cornerstone. But they went out and got Javi Baez for 6 years, 140. In my opinion, Javi Baez isn't talented enough to be a cornerstone of your franchise. And 6 years isn't enough time to lock him down as your franchise guy. So I don't really like the signing for the Tigers.
Yeah, it was a little bit weird to me because I feel like if you're making that move, you have to bring in a guy before. And maybe they have something set up with Correa. I don't know. We were
That would
pretty
be
sure he was
very
gonna go there.
interesting if Javi. Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll see.
Play a second. I don't know. They'll figure it out, but it's not like, oh, you already got your shortstop, you can't get another one. But it's just you spent a lot of money already. And I mean, it's not like an insane amount, but that's still a big chunk. And for a guy like Javi Baez, who is flashy but really hasn't put up the numbers that like actually help a team a ton, it's a little bit weird. So I agree. I am a little bit concerned about it just because if Detroit doesn't do anything else, it seems like a really random signing to me. But hey, if they're not done, then maybe it'll be good.
Like this contract would have been, I would have applauded if the Mets did it along with the moves that they already made, because that fits. They're in a win now, like, and Javi will hit some home runs and make some good defensive plays that can contribute to that. But the Tigers are in a spot where that's not what they need. They need a guy that will produce in ways that help a team win and help a team develop. And I don't think he does that. So I'm not a fan of the move. Moving on, the Angels, we saw they've already spent money on pitching and getting Noah Syndergaard. We talked about that. But they re-signed Raisel Iglesias, a big arm, all-star reliever, 4 years, $58 million. It looks like the Angels are determined to spend money on pitching, which is good to see. They need to.
It's exactly what everybody is saying they need. So it's a step in the right direction. They need to figure it out with the guys that they have on this team, with how amazing Shohei and Trout are. There's no reason you're not making the playoffs. You got to make moves.
Yeah. Another re-signing. The Dodgers brought back Chris Taylor, 4 year, $60 million deal. I think it's a steal. We talked about it at the beginning of the offseason. As a Dodger fan, I thought Chris Taylor was the most important guy to bring back just because of how valuable he can be playing 5-6 positions on the field. And we saw he was an all-star last year. Like, he can produce at an all-star caliber level while providing that versatility. And I think 4 years, $60 million shows that he wanted to stay with the Dodgers. I feel like he could have got more money elsewhere.
Right. There's no real comparison you can do for like a glue guy for the MLB to the NBA or anything, but it's like sort of in a weird way like Draymond to the Warriors, where he doesn't put up numbers that are comparable to the top guys, but like, you know how valuable he is to the team. And you might look at Chris Taylor and like what Diego just said, we're like, oh, you'd rather have Chris Taylor than Max Scherzer? What are you talking about? But like, Dodgers fans know how valuable he is.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really good that I'm sure he took a pay cut to be there.
Oh,
so
100%.
Yeah, he could have gotten a lot more from, or at least more years on a different team to secure some more money. But yeah, I think it's a big signing for them just because like, if you lose all of your free agents, basically, it's going to suck for your team, just like morale, I guess. So yeah, this is a big one.
Yeah, I think the feeling within like the Dodgers fan base after back-to-back days losing Seager and Scherzer, it was like, oh, are we really blowing this up? And then I feel like re-signing Taylor kind of just is like a sigh of relief, kind of like, okay, we still have obviously a great team, but also that shows that we're going to, keep moving forward this offseason. And, we're going to keep going through these deals, but a lot of them are smaller things that maybe we don't have much to talk about. But if there's stuff that comes up, just kind of throw it out there. The Arizona Diamondbacks signed Mark Melancon, 2 years, $14 million deal. He led the league in saves last year for the Padres. I think it's more of a loss for the Padres is what I wanted to talk about than gain for the D-backs, because the D-backs aren't doing anything anytime soon.
Right.
I don't know. Melancon was good. Obviously, he had the save numbers, but I think the Padres should have brought him back. I feel like it would have been the right move. I don't know why the D-backs, I don't know if they just wanted to not have him play for the Padres or what, but
it's kind of random.
Yeah. 2 year, $14 million, Mark Melancon.
Yeah,
I mean, D-backs.
If the Padres offered him the same amount, I'm sure he would have taken it. So it's just kind of weird what the Padres are doing, that they're not spending anything.
The Padres have not didn't do anything.
Their last year was the most disappointing in the league out of any team. So I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. The Padres team is nowhere on this list, so they have not done anything. The Chicago Cubs made a little bit of a splash, signed Marcus Stroman, 3-year, $71 million deal. To go along with that, they signed Yan Gomes and Clint Frazier. This Cubs team isn't poised to make a jump up towards the Brewers or Cardinals at the top of the division, but Stroman's a good guy, a good clubhouse guy, I think, for a team that kind of needs an identity. So I like the signing for the Cubs.
Yeah, and apparently the Mets didn't even offer him a contract, which
Yeah,
is
that's
really weird, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, for the Cubs, great for them. Those 3 signings are all good players. Even Clint Frazier, who had a very down year, has shown flashes of being good. So yeah, I think it's just obviously they're in rebuilding mode. So get some players who can help with that.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what Clint Frazier does. He was a top prospect in the MLB and then kind of got screwed by the way the Yankees built their team.
Right.
He just kind of got jammed there with they went out, traded for Joey Gallo. They have Aaron Judge. They have Giancarlo Stanton. Brett Gardner, for some reason, never leaves that lineup. So we'll see. He'll definitely get a starting spot with the Cubs, I assume. Moving on, the Red Sox signed Rich Hill, signed James Paxton, and they traded away Hunter Renfroe for Jackie Bradley Jr. Fine moves, except for the Jackie Bradley Jr. one. I don't understand that. They're paying Jackie Bradley more money. Jackie Bradley Jr. is a terrible hitter. He's a great defender, but it's not like they need that necessarily. Like Hunter Renfroe will go out and hit 20, 25, 30 bombs for you. Jackie Bradley Jr. won't. I didn't understand that trade.
Yeah. For pitching wise, I mean, that's what the Red Sox needed. So,
yeah, those were good. I didn't even mention that, but yeah.
Right. Those were solid. But yeah, I agree that I just don't even know why they would think of doing that, to be honest. I don't know what that helps in any way. But yeah, the pitching, their offense was great last season. It's their pitching that held them back. So getting anyone would be nice, honestly.
The Miami Marlins have been making some moves quietly. The big one that not enough people talk about, Avisal Garcia signed a 4-year, $53 million deal, and he was a big reason for why the Brewers kind of made a run this year. He was very good offensively. He kind of picked up the slack when Christian Yelich was struggling, and to have a little, a good power bat for the next 4 years for the Marlins, that's a great move. Just to kind of run through it, they also acquired all-star Joey Wendell from the Rays. Again, there go the Rays trading away guys as soon as they're going to want some money. And then they acquired Jacob Stallings from the Pirates, one of the best defensive catchers in the league. The Marlins made some good moves this offseason so far.
Yeah, that's a really good move for your culture, just getting players who have produced in the past and able to show your younger guys how to play, I guess, because they're an exciting team, even though they're not very good. Jazz Chisholm is on that team. That's going to make it exciting just by itself. So yeah, I think it's moves that in the future will help more than right now, honestly, but still pretty good for them.
Yeah. The Marlins are also a team that has they're the number 3 farm system in baseball. They have 4 pitchers in the top 100 MLB prospects. So in the next couple of years, the Marlins are going to make a comeback, so to speak. Speaking of the Rays, they signed Corey Kluber, 1-year, $8 million deal. That's a project, and I think the Rays are one of the best teams in terms of projects with pitching. Don't be surprised if Corey Kluber has a 2.75 ERA and wins 12 games for them. The Rays totally would do that. But the big move for the Rays, they gave Wander Franco his money, 12 years. Contract is up to $223 million. It'll probably end up being around 200, which a deal like this we've seen in the past, but I think it's the Rays knocked it out of the park. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
To sign a guy that is going to be an MVP candidate for probably all 12 of those years for about 20 mil a year.
Right. And it's always a risk to sign someone for that long, but if you're going to do it with anyone, do it for the would have been rookie of the year if
Yeah.
time manipulation wasn't a thing, and someone who like was amazing throughout the entire season and playoffs. Like very few people did what he could do in his rookie season. So he's shown all the glimpses of what he can be already. And yes, it's scary to sign someone for that long, but like if you're gonna do it to anyone, do it to him.
Yeah,
So,
he's your guy. He's 20
Right.
years old.
right. And I mean, the Rays don't spend money, so good for them. Finally.
Yeah, they traded Joey Wendell to like to sure up money for Corey Kluber. And then they signed Corey Kluber to an $8 million deal. So that's part of the whole lockout situation, which we're going to talk about a little bit. This is a long episode. So what? Moving on, the Phillies signed Corey Knebel to a 1-year, $10 million deal. He was a solid reliever, played for the Dodgers last year. Phillies need relief pitching. We all know that. The Pirates signed Roberto Perez to a 1-year deal. He is no longer the Guardians catcher. I guess he was never the Guardians catcher, but is that a big loss for the Guardians?
How much money did he get? Honestly, I haven't seen it.
I don't know, but he's very good defensively.
He's the best defensive catcher in the league for the last like 5 years. Offensively, he's been a little bit below average for a catcher, which
$5 million.
Like, why can the Guardians not spend that much money?
They definitely can. It's just they don't want to.
We'll get into it later. It's just so frustrating that like he was a big part of our team, just like in the locker room and everyone. Like Jose Ramirez was friends with him. Like, why would you not want to make your star player happy? You already traded away our other star players, so why not? So yeah, I mean, good for the Pirates, I guess. I don't really know what they're gonna get from him, to be honest. I mean, defensively, sure. You lost Stallings, so like, there you go. You get the best defensive catcher. Offensively, he's not going to be very good. But yeah, it's just an identity thing, I guess.
Yeah, what's funny is the Pirates made that move when they still had Jacob Stallings on their team, and then they said, "All right, later, Jacob Stallings." So he'll be the starting catcher with the Pirates. It's interesting. The Pirates don't want any offensive production from their catchers. They just kind of want to jump from defense to defense, which, okay. The White Sox have made a couple moves. They re-signed Lurie Garcia, outfielder / infielder, to a little extension. They went out and signed Kendall Graveman, 3-year, $24 million deal. He pitched for both the Mariners and the Astros this year. He was very good this year. And I think the White Sox are going to be an interesting team to look out for. Again, the lockout is happening, so we don't know if they're going to get more opportunity to sign players, but I'd say they need to get healthy and maybe figure out their offense this upcoming year, because their pitching was fine. Like they had 3 very good starters, but I think they need to add a couple offensive pieces from the White Sox.
Yeah, I think they're a team who can make a lot of small moves and be fine with it. It's just the health that they need to get right, because they have so much talent on this team where if they're healthy, they're one of the best teams in the league.
It's depth. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. They just need to go sign depth.
Right. And I mean, you can't just say like, oh yeah, get healthy, because no team is going to do that, especially if their team is injury prone. So you need to be like, I guess, proactive with this. You're going to understand that some people are going to be injured, so you need to have those spots be able to be filled with guys who can actually produce. And I mean, they're a well-run organization. I'm sure they'll do it.
Yeah. Just a couple of last moves. Not much to talk about. The Orioles signed Rougned Odor. Okay. The Braves signed Kirby Yates, 2-year, $8.25 million deal. Pretty solid reliever for the defending champs. And the Minnesota Twins extended their guy, Byron Buxton, 7-year, $100 million deal. I think it's a good deal for both sides. Better for Buxton because he has been injury prone, and locking up $100 million over the next 7 years.
It's a lot. It's
pretty good.
I'd take that.
Yeah, I'll take that any day of the week. That's all we got for free agency. I think we kind of ran through all the moves that will be made for a long time. And let's move into that, because as of December 1st, the MLB is in lockout. If you don't know what that means, I'm just going to run through it and then we're going to give our reaction to it. Yeah, so basically what is going on in the MLB right now is that the owners and players union, the owners slash MLB and the players union, they're two different sides. They couldn't come to an agreement on basically a deal that determines how MLB is run and how Major League Baseball is organized. It's been over 20 plus years without an issue in this contract. And yeah, it expired and they couldn't come to an agreement. So therefore, MLB goes into lockout, which means everything is done. No activities, all baseball related activities are done until they can reach an agreement, which we have no idea when that will happen. And so why this happened over the past 5 years since the last contract was kind of renewed, revenue and sales for MLB has increased dramatically. Baseball is popular, like a lot more popular than it was 5 years ago. But what the players union is pointing out is that the MLB players' salaries, they have not increased at a rate that would be considered equal to the rate at which revenue has gone up. So the players aren't getting compensated for how much the sport has gained popularity, so to say. And so basically what the players union is coming to the owners and MLB and Rob Manfred with is saying, hey, you guys are making a lot more money right now. How about the players make more money? But along with that, they make more money earlier in their careers so that these organizations don't take advantage of them. Less playing time manipulation, which we mentioned when it comes to Wander Franco. They waited a little bit to have him called up so that it wasn't considered a full year tenured from his contract. So basically that's what the players are arguing is we deserve more money because the sport and the organization is making more money and we're the ones basically drawing all that in. And so what the owners are saying is basically just like, no, like we are getting all this money and we don't want to pay you more because that's just who we are. We're billionaires that like having way too much money for one person to have. And the owners, because they have all the power in this situation, because they quite literally own these players, can move into a lockout, which they did. And basically, we're unsure as to where this will end up, when the season will start, if there will be a 2022 season. Like I said, everything is done. All free agents right now cannot sign, cannot talk to teams until lockout ends. Freddie Freeman, Carlos Correa, all those guys, you're out of a job until this is figured out. And so what it sounds like right now from reports from all that is that these two sides are on very opposite ends of the table and neither is really willing to budge.
Yeah. It's a weird situation, but it seems like most of the public is on the side of the players. I mean, most people don't have billions of dollars, which these owners have. And it's also weird because it's like, you can look at it as, oh, I mean, you're only making $15 million a year. Like, oh, boo-hoo. But I mean, it is about fairness here. And I think that's what they're arguing, where like, if you're driving this revenue, you should get your equal share of it. And I mean, I feel like that's something that just makes sense. And obviously it's a lot more complicated than that. There's a lot more details about it. Like, I think a big thing that they want is like early in players' careers, when they're in AAA, AA, whatever, you really don't get paid a lot of money, like at all. It's basically signing bonus, and then you're paid like almost minimum wage, sort of. Like, players don't get money. And then obviously, if you make it into MLB, like the big leagues, you get your big deals, and then yes, you have a ton of money. But like before that, you need to have like livable conditions. It's really weird when you're the one who's going to be driving all this money. And it's just sad because the owners are the ones with a ton of money and they just have the power to say no. Like, they're in the position, they're just greedy, yes, but like they can just say no. And it's like, yeah, okay, I can't really do anything about that, which just sucks. It's because it's this power dynamic that's really weird. But yeah, I could see this going on for a really long time, to be honest. So it's a little bit concerning.
Yeah. And, to go along with that, it's not just like the minor league players that are struggling. Obviously, they're definitely struggling, and I guess struggling isn't a word, but not getting paid what they deserve. It's even the MLB players in their first 4 to 5 to 6 years of their career, when say, you don't get that big deal, that big Wander Franco extension because you're quote unquote not good enough or whatever it may be. So I guess like as an example, would you say this upcoming season that Walker Buehler is going to be a better pitcher than Kevin Gausman?
Probably.
Yeah. Kevin Gausman next year is getting paid $22 million and Walker Buehler is getting paid $6 million, simply because he hasn't been in the major leagues as long as Kevin Gausman. And that's part of what the players union is arguing is, why is that the key determining factor in how much money we get? Because if you really look at it logically, I kind of side with the players when it comes to that. Why should a player that is so much better than people that are getting paid more than them be paid less simply because they're, say, younger or don't have as much experience? And that's the side of the players union that I really kind of agree with and side with in this whole thing.
Yeah. And the timing manipulation thing too is something that just seems like it's so easily fixed that it shouldn't be a thing, where Wander Franco has to work another year at the same, well, I mean, he got the deal, but let's just say, for example, he didn't get this $13 million deal. He's still on his rookie contract. The reason that they brought him in the middle of the season is because it was long enough where he basically didn't get that full year of his contract underway. So he still has 3 or 4 more years instead of taking one of those off. So he just has to work another year for that same price when he obviously deserves so much more. And that's just something that seems like, just say you can't do that anymore. Like, why? It's just that you don't want to pay them. And if you don't want to pay them, and they don't deserve it, then they won't get that money anyway. But it's obvious that they deserve it if they want more money, and that's what they're complaining about. So it just seems like some of these problems are easily fixed, but also at the same time, people can just say no to it, and that's basically all that there is. So that's why it's going to take so long.
Yeah, and I think right now it's just going to come down to how far will the players union kind of negotiate and budge, because the owners really aren't going to, and that's how it will always be, is that they're going to hold the power and they're the ones that make the decision in the end. Like they have everything that they could have is it's all the owners, because they can just say, okay, we're not playing this year if you actually don't want that. And so it's going to come down to how much the players union is going to be willing to collaborate and kind of give and take in this scenario.
Right. We'll see.
Yeah, we will see. It's a lot. But as of right now, Major League Baseball does not exist. So enjoy the NBA and NFL. Anyways, yeah, that's all we got for this one. It was a long episode, but it was a fun one. We had a lot to talk about. A lot of stuff happened this last week and a half-ish, because we didn't do one the week before. It's been fun. If you listen this far, great job. Thank you so much for the support. It's been a long one. But yeah, follow us on all of our social medias, do all that. And we really appreciate you rocking with us, watching this one, listening to this one. And yeah, that was the World of Sports Podcast, episode 61. And for my co-host, Logan Ring, my name is Diego Sandoval, signing off.